A Journey to the West, Chapter 3. Sun Wukong causes havoc in the Dragon Palace to seize the Golden Banded stuff and furiously smashes the Hall of Yuma to alter the Book of Life and Death. The story goes that the handsome Monkey King Sun Wukong returned to Flower Fruit Mountain after defeating the Demon King of Chaos and seizing a large sword. Every day he would train the little monkeys in martial arts, teaching them to cut bamboo, to make spears, and to carve wood into swords. They even made flags blue whistles and set up camps, playing joyfully as if they were in a real military camp. One day Sun Wukong suddenly thought, "We're having fun here, but what if a human king or a bird or beast king finds out and thinks we're rebelling? If they attack us, what will we do? We only have bamboo poles and wooden swords. There's no way we could fight them off. We need sharp weapons, but where can we find them?" The little monkeys became frightened and said, "Great King, you think far ahead. But where could we possibly find such weapons?" Just as they were speaking, 4 old monkeys approached Sun Wukong and said, "Great King, getting sharp weapons is actually quite easy." Sun Wukong asked how so. The 4 old monkeys replied, 200 miles east of our mountain, across the water lies the kingdom of Aolai. The king there has countless civilians and soldiers in the city, and surely there are craftsmen who work with gold, silver, copper, and iron. If you go there, you can either buy some weapons or have them forged, and then return to teach us to defend Flower Fruit Mountain. This is a long-term solution. Hearing this, Sun Wukong was delighted and said, "You stay here and play, I'll be right back." The handsome Monkey King immediately soared into the air on his somersault cloud, and in the blink of an eye, he flew across the 200 miles of water. Sure enough, he saw a bustling city on the other side, with busy streets and people coming and going. Sun Wukong thought there must be ready-made weapons here. Instead of going down to buy a few, it would be better to use my magic to get some. So he chanted a spell and blew it out, suddenly causing a great storm, with winds howling and sand flying everywhere. Truly terrifying. The storm churned the heavens and the earth into chaos. Fish and crabs in the rivers and seas fled in fear, and the tigers and wolves in the mountains and forests. Scattered in terror, all commerce stopped and people hid away. Even the king retreated to his inner chambers, and the civil and military officials returned to their offices. Sun Wukong descended and stormed through the city gates, heading straight to the armory. When he opened the door, he saw all kinds of weapons inside: swords, spears, halberds, and more. All fully stocked, Sun Wukong was overjoyed, but thought, how much can I carry by myself? I should use my cloning technique to take it all back. He plucked a handful of hairs, chewed them in his mouth, spat them out, and chanted a spell, shouting, "Transform instantly." 1,000 little monkeys appeared, grabbing and snatching everything. The strong ones took 5 to 7 pieces, and the weaker ones took 3 to 4 pieces, completely emptying the armory. Then Sun Wukong led the little monkeys back to Flower Fruit Mountain. On the clouds, the little monkeys rushed over to see, and there stood Sun Wukong on the ground. They all came forward to bow and ask what had happened. Sun Wukong recounted how he had used the storm to move the weapons. The little monkeys thanked him and spent the whole day playing with their new swords and spears. The next day, the little monkeys continued their military drills. Flower Fruit Mountain was home to over 47,000 monkeys. The commotion alarmed the monsters throughout the mountain wolves. Tigers, leopards, and all sorts of demon kings from 72 caves all came to pledge allegiance to Sun Wukong as their bringing annual tributes. The demon kings also sent golden drums, colorful flags, and armor making for a lively scene. Sun Wukong was in high spirits, but suddenly said, "This sword of mine doesn't feel right. What should I do?" The 4 old monkeys stepped forward and said, "Great King, you are a sage and an immortal. Ordinary weapons won't do for you. Beneath the iron bridge on our mountain, the water flows to the Dragon Palace of the Eastern Sea. If you go down there and ask the old Dragon King for a weapon, you're sure to find one that suits you." Sun Wukong was delighted and said, "I'll go right away." Sun Wukong leapt to the bridgehead, used a water-dividing spell, chanted a mantra, and dove into the water, heading for the bottom of the Eastern Sea. As he was walking, a sea-patrolling yaksha suddenly blocked his way and asked, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Sun Wukong replied, "I am Sun Wukong, the natural sage of Flower Fruit Mountain, and a neighbor of the old Dragon King. How do you not recognize me?" the Yaksha hurried to report to the Dragon King. The Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, Guang quickly brought his dragon sons, grandsons, and shrimp and crab soldiers out to greet him, inviting Sun Wukong into the Crystal Palace. After offering tea, the Dragon King asked when Sun Wukong had attained enlightenment, and what magical arts he had learned. Sun Wukong replied, after my birth, I became a monk and cultivated a body that is immortal and indestructible. Now I'm teaching my descendants to guard the mountain caves, but I don't have a proper weapon. I've long heard that the Dragon King enjoys great wealth in this palace, so I came to ask for a spare divine weapon. The Dragon King found it difficult to refuse, so he ordered someone to bring out a large broadsword. Sun Wukong said, I don't use swords. Give me something else. The Dragon King then had a 9-pronged fork brought out. Sun Wukong tried it, put it down, and said, too light, it doesn't feel right. Give me something else. The Dragon King laughed and said, this fork weighs 3,600 pounds. But Sun Wukong still said it didn't feel right. The Dragon King then had a square-headed habit brought out. Weighing 7,200 pounds, Sun Wukong played with it for a while, but still said it was too light. The old Dragon King was terrified and said, immortal. This is the heaviest weapon in my palace. There's nothing else, Sun Wukong smiled and said. They say the Dragon King's treasures are many, so search again if I find something I like. I'll certainly pay for it. The Dragon King insisted there was nothing else. At this moment, the Dragon Queen and the Dragon Princess came over and said, Great King, this sage seems extraordinary. Recently, that divine iron, the stabilizing needle of the Milky Way, has been shining brilliantly with auspicious rays all around. Perhaps it's meant for this sage. The Dragon King said that was the anchor used by Ye, the Great, when he controlled the floods, to gauge the depths of the rivers and seas. What use could it be? The Dragon Queen replied. Whether it's useful or not, just give it to him. Let him modify it, and be done with it. The old Dragon King told Sun Wukong about it, and Sun Wukong said, bring it out for me to see. The Dragon King said it was too heavy to lift, and that Sun Wukong would have to see it for himself. Sun Wukong followed the Dragon King to the middle of the sea vault, and indeed saw rays of golden light everywhere. The Dragon King pointed, and said that the glowing object was the divine iron. Sun Wukong stepped forward and touched it. It was an iron pillar as thick as a rice measure, and more than 2 jars long. He compared it with his hand and said it was too thick and too long, and would be better if it were shorter and thinner. The treasure immediately shrank a few feet and became narrower. Sun Wukong then said it would be better if it were even thinner, and the treasure shrunk again. Sun Wukong was delighted, picking it up to see that it had golden hoops on both ends, and was made of black iron in the middle. There were also words engraved on it saying, as you wish, golden banded stuff, and it weighed 13,500 pounds. Sun Wukong thought this treasure was truly as he wished. He wielded it around the Crystal Palace, terrifying the Dragon King and the young dragons. Sun Wukong sat on the palace throne, holding the treasure, and said to the Dragon King, thank you for your neighborly kindness. The Dragon King humbly replied. No need for thanks, Sun Wukong then said. This treasure is great, but I don't have any clothes to go with it. What should I do if you have any armor here? Give me a set. The Dragon King said he didn't have any. But Sun Wukong didn't believe him and refused to leave. The Dragon King had no choice, and suggested that in case of an emergency, they should beat the drums and ring the bells to summon the other 3 Dragon Kings. For advice, Sun Wukong urged them to hurry up and do it. Shortly after, the other 3 Dragon Kings arrived. After hearing the situation, the Dragon King of the South Sea, Qing, became furious and suggested raising an army to capture Sun Wukong. The old Dragon King warned that the treasure Sun Wukong had taken was incredibly powerful. Any contact with it could lead to death. The Dragon King of the West Sea, Run, advised against fighting him, and suggested they simply give Sun Wukong and send him away, then let the Heavenly Court deal with him. The Dragon King of the North Sea, Shun, offered a pair of lotus silk cloud walking shoes. The Dragon King of the West Sea, Run, contributed a suit of golden chainmail armor, and the Dragon King of the South Sea, Qing, provided a phoenix feathered golden crown. The old Dragon King was overjoyed and presented these items to Sun Wukong. Sun Wukong, fully dressed in his new armor and wielding his golden banded staff, left while performing martial displays all the way out. The 4 Dragon Kings were furious and conspired to report this incident to the Heavenly Court. Sun Wukong parted the waters and returned to Flower Fruit Mountain. When the little monkeys saw that he was completely dry and holding a precious weapon, they all knelt down exclaiming how majestic their king was. Sun Wukong planted the golden banded staff in the ground, but none of the little monkeys could lift it. He explained the origin of the staff, demonstrating how he could shrink it down to the size of a needle and tuck it behind his ear. He then displayed his heavenly transformation spell, growing to an enormous size, terrifying all the monsters on the mountain into bowing and paying homage. Sun Wukong then returned to normal size, shrunk the staff back into a needle and stored it away. He appointed the 4 old monkeys as his generals, entrusting them with the duties of setting up camp and managing rewards and punishments. With his mind at ease, Sun Wukong began spending his days riding on clouds, traveling the seas and making many wise friends. He also met 6 brothers, including the Bull Demon King and the Dragon Demon King. They would often discuss literature and martial arts, enjoying themselves immensely. One day, after drinking too much, Sun Wukong fell asleep and dreamed that 2 figures with official documents came to claim his soul, taking him to the underworld. Upon waking up and realizing he was really there, he became furious, declaring that he had transcended the 3 realms and was not bound by the 5 elements, thus not under the jurisdiction of the King of Hell. When the 2 Soul Reapers tried to drag him inside, Sun Wukong grew angry, pulled out his golden banded staff, and smashed them into pulp before storming into the city. The bull-headed and horse-faced demons were terrified and fled in all directions, while the ghost soldiers rushed to report to the 10 Yama Kings. The 10 Yama Kings, upon seeing Sunwalker's fierce appearance, quickly arranged themselves in order and asked who he was. Sun Wukong declared himself as the heavenly-born sage of Curtain Cave in Flower Fruit Mountain and demanded the life and death register. The 10 Yama Kings had no choice but to bring it out. Sun Wukong found his own name and erased it, along with the names of all the other monkeys. Then he fought his way out of the underworld. The 10 Yama Kings, helpless, went to Green Cloud Palace to consult with Itigakrasit Bodhisattva about how to report this to the Heavenly Court. Upon waking up, Sun Wukong recounted the event to the little monkeys, who all bowed in gratitude. From then on, many of the monkeys on Flower Fruit Mountain no longer aged, as their names were no longer listed in the underworld. Various monster kings from different caves came to offer their congratulations. Meanwhile, in the Heavenly Court, the Dragon King of the East Sea and the King of Hell both submitted reports about Sun Wilkenuk actions. The Jade Emperor asked when this demon monkey was born and how he had become so powerful. Clairvoyant and Clairaudient explained that this monkey had been born from 300 years ago and had since cultivated into an immortal, but they didn't know where he had been training these past few years. The Jade Emperor asked who could subdue Sun Wukong, and Tai-Bai Jinxing suggested offering him a government position to see if he would comply. If he behaved, it would be good. If not, they could capture him later. The Jade Emperor agreed and sent Tai-Bai Jinxing to offer Sun Wukong amnesty. Tai-Bai Jinxing arrived at Flower Fruit Mountain and informed Sun Wukong that there was an imperial inviting him to heaven. Sun Wukong was delighted and followed Tai-Bai Jinxing to the Heavenly Court. What kind of official position would he be given?